You're welcome, guys. Welcome this evening to a very special live stream. I'm Charlie Lambden. This is Moving Home with Charlie, and this is the channel where I try to share my insights from behind the scenes of the home moving industry over the last 25 years with home movers to try and help level the playing field in the battle to move home and the battle to get yourself a home and the battle to keep a home as the cost of living crisis gets harder and harder. This evening is we've got a special guest this evening who has been a follower of the channel for a lot longer than I realized, and from whom I got a very special message a few weeks ago, sharing the story of her parents' negative equity and how it affected her and her family, her siblings. Alex Housing-Stig is joining us this evening as well. But for those of you who are new to the channel and don't know this, one of my main motivations of this channel is to raise awareness of the risks of negative equity, what it is, why it happens, and most of all, how badly it can derail people's lives, sometimes irreversibly. It's no exaggeration to say that negative equity can be the straw that breaks a camel's back for some people and ends up with people taking their own lives. And I'm very, very frustrated when I hear people say, oh, negative equity doesn't really matter. As long as you keep on paying, it doesn't matter. And it only affects a few people. Most people don't get affected by it. But the shattering effect that it can have on some people's lives and then their children's lives and their opportunities. And in the 90s, it was something like 400,000 people had their homes repossessed. That's 400,000 families having their homes repossessed. So I reject, in the strongest possible terms, that negative equity is not something to worry about. It is absolutely something to worry about. And it is why my message from the start on this channel, when I started saying that I was expecting house prices to come down a long way, has still always been, still buy, because having a home is more important than anything else. Buy, but don't overpay, because if you overpay, you massively increase your chances of ending up in negative equity in a housing price downturn. And if you don't overpay, you massively improve your chances of riding out any negative equity that you may find yourself in. In a nutshell, for those of you who don't know, negative equity. So normally you have equity in your property, and the equity in your property is the bit you own that the bank doesn't own, right? So if you borrow 90% to buy a home and you put 10% deposit in, then you've got 10% equity. Negative equity is when the value of your home falls below the outstanding balance on your mortgage. And the negative equity part is the difference between how much you owe on your mortgage and what your house is worth. And eventually, once forbearance measures and all the other stuff is out of the way, ultimately a bank will use the law to have you evicted, kick you out, and put your house on the market and sell it. They're legally required to get the best market price they can for it, because afterwards, whatever the shortfall is, they will then come after you, even though you've lost your house already and lost all your equity. They will come after you for the balance, and they will chase you for that debt. They may well chase you into bankruptcy, but they will chase you until you get it. And it is such a horrific, especially if you think about how long you've saved up for your deposit, it is such a horrific scenario. And I always say that in all areas of life, the best approach is to prepare for the worst, which means considering the worst case scenario and seem to be prepared for it, but hope for the best. Okay. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce and bring Maddison in. Good evening, Maddison. How are you doing? Thanks very much for joining us.
Hello.
I was so sweet to get your message and for you to tell me how much you and your mum are huge fans of the channel.
Yeah.
And how actually the channel helped. I think I'm right in saying the channel helped you get into buying your own home, which you now own. You've got your own home.
Yeah, that's right.
You and your mum have been through the mill. And so I'm going to shut up for a while. And by the way, Alex is here as well. Alex, I'll bring you in. Alex, are you there? Can you hear us?
Good evening, both. Hello,
Good
Maddison.
evening, Alex.
Hello.
Alex and I are going to shut up and listen as we ask you the first question of the evening, which is, can you explain how your parents ended up losing the home that they bought and raised you in, I'm assuming, up to the age you were when you lost the home? What happened, why it happened, and how? And we'll stop just after it's happened, and we'll discuss that part first, and then we'll move on to what happened afterwards. But to begin with, how did your parents lose their home?
Yeah, so I was 16 at the time. It was 2008. And I mean, as a 16-year-old, you don't really understand, obviously, what goes on or your parents' financial situation. But my dad had his own business. My mum was a stay-at-home mum. I'm one of four, so I'm the oldest. We had like I'm from Horsham, so from the south, West Sussex, very expensive area. Grew up there my entire childhood, and basically we were in the position where I asked my mum about this again today just to clarify the situation, but they couldn't. My dad's business wasn't doing well, so they realized the only way to get money just merely to survive was to accept the mortgage company giving them more money out of the equity of the house. And my mum said even at the time, because the boom was so huge, they weren't even coming to actually assess the homes physically in person. It was all done by computer. So they were given a price at the time of what equity they could take out of it, and my mum instantly knew that that was overpriced, and that
the lenders actually valued it without turning up, and they said it's worth this much, we'll give you this much.
Yeah, and my mum and dad just had to do that merely just to survive with 4 kids, really. And it got to the point where my dad's business had struggled for so long. My parents split up, and when my dad had to move out, my mum just couldn't continue paying the mortgage. The interest rates had risen so much, and basically she just walked into the bank and gave back the keys, because luckily for us, she had a friend who owns various rental properties, so she just seized the opportunity to basically like chuck the keys back, go bankrupt, and have to move us all out of our family home and into this new rental house. But it was because she was faced with the possibility of being homeless with 4 children, and how does anybody deal with that? But I mean, being 16, I remember it affecting me a lot, and I don't even know if my mum or my parents know this, but I actually used to still have the key, and I used to go back to the house after school and let myself in, and I'd see all the posts, and I used to actually, because my neighbors were like my best friends still, and I used to just go into the house and just sit and cry like age 16, 15.
Because we get such a deep bond with the homes that we grow up in, don't we?
Yeah. So that's really what happened.
This is fascinating, because I you and I haven't had this discussion off camera before, so I didn't know the detail of this. So your mum actually didn't wait. She knew what was coming, and decided to take action before that happened and get you guys moved into somewhere that, rather than actually being forcefully evicted. But
and it's really, because otherwise, being homeless and have to go into emergency accommodation with 4 kids while still having to, how does anyone do that? It is painfully difficult. And I actually, in the recent years prior to now, I actually used to work for a housing association, so I saw it firsthand, people being made homeless, families destroyed. It really is hugely difficult, and this is the importance of people having a home that is secure, really.
Massively. So, okay, now there will be, and I know because among my audience there are some very, very harsh people with harsh views about people who over leverage and get themselves into this problem in the first place. So how long had your parents owned the home? And I mean, I don't know how, it's a while ago now, you may not remember the numbers and stuff, but how long had they owned it by the time you...
So they bought the house in 91, just before I was born in 92. They bought it with a 95% mortgage. Prior to that, they had properties before, but in the recent years before that, they had been traveling, tried to set up a business in another country, and that hadn't gone to plan. So they'd lived off the proceeds of the previous house sale to then have to get a 95% mortgage on our home. But my mum was saying back in the 80s, their first house they bought, they had 100% mortgage because they rode the massive boom back then. And my mum said we doubled our return in 2 years in the 80s. So look, with these things, all it takes is one bad financial decision and mistake.
And of course, it's the timing. It's the timing. I mean, I bought my first flat in, I think, 1995. And I got very lucky with the timing. The prices were shooting back up again. But so it sounds like, so they bought it in 1991, you're saying, with a 95% mortgage. And the house price falls hadn't finished at that point, had they?
No,
I think house prices. Sorry, Alex.
Well, and this is the thing, is I know there are going to be people looking at this saying, well, Maddison just said interest rates had gone up, and actually they were way down. I mean, when they bought in the 90s, interest rates at that point, they were up in the sort of 12-13% mark. But it was a very difficult time because, yes, they were, but house prices were very cheap. And as you say, they made a lot of money in the first 10 years as the house prices went up, and interest rates then dropped down to an average of 5.5% again. But all it took was the uplift from 4.5% in about 2005 to 5.75% in 2007, along with, for the first time, you could self-certify. You said how much money you had, you said how much your house was worth, and people like Northern Rock were handing out 125% loans. You didn't, not 100%, not a surveyor coming and valuing the property, but, would you like some more money on the back of your house? Yeah, no, that's okay. We'll give you that because prices are going up. They have done for the last 15 years. Look at it. And it was horrendous. Anyone who fell into that trap, and I can see it with 4 kids, how easy that is to do. You go, well, it's money at only, we were paying back in the 90s, we were paying 12.5%, 14% on our mortgage. Now we're only paying 5%, and they're saying that they'll give us 25 grand and we only have to pay 5% on it. Well, rock and roll.
But it sounds like, you say your father worked for himself.
Yeah.
The 90s were not a boom time for anyone working for themselves at that point.
No.
It sounds like they remortgaged, and as house prices went up, they were increasing their borrowing. And
that's right.
And I know that there are people who don't have children and who haven't tried to run their own business, who will judge and say, well, he shouldn't have borrowed all that extra money. But and unless you've been in that situation, you don't know what it's like, right?
Well, everything's great with hindsight, isn't it? If we could walk along, like, all of our lives would be different. And
so easy to look back.
It is so easy. And, it's never easy to sort of pay for a large family anyway. Like, it's not easy to make any money. My dad is a super intelligent guy, and it doesn't mean that anybody is a failure. People just struggle sometimes. Businesses struggle through, sometimes not even your fault particularly, but it's one of those situations where it doesn't even really matter about why it happened. It still happens, and it continues to happen to this day.
And it happens to large companies too, like the Body Shop and Wilko. It's not just
like today.
Large businesses go as well. So I have more failed businesses behind me than anyone I know, and to me that's a badge of honor because I have learned and I got better every single time. And some people think it's shameful to have a failed business. No, it isn't. No, 90% of businesses fail. It's part of the process. It's how you learn. It's how you grow. And so I think huge respect to your dad for raising 4 kids and running a business. And you do whatever you have to do, and then of course, including, by the way, the whole property sector and mortgage market back in 2007, no one would have been saying house prices are going to fall. None of them would have been saying it. They would all have been saying what they're saying today, which is everything's fine. Keep on borrowing.
Yeah,
you then alluded, Maddison, to the effect that it had on you and your siblings and what happened afterwards. I'd love you to just elaborate on that a bit if you could.
Yeah, so I mean, growing up was not easy. I come from Horsham in Sussex, so very middle class area, very like well-to-do sort of thing. And growing up, it was just, you know, almost painfully obvious that we did not have very much money. I still had a great childhood, like I had fun. It wasn't a huge issue, but it just kind of cemented the feeling of just never quite feeling good enough and always feeling like a failure. For example, like some of my friends in the summer holidays would be going to Barbados and I wasn't even going to Butlins. So it was painful because, you know, at least if you grow up in council housing, all your mates next door are in a similar position to you and you kind of bond over that and you're on the same thing. But it was just very obvious to me that we just didn't have the same amount of wealth of other people. And really, it just adds to the feeling of just never feeling good enough. And on top of that, I also have severe dyslexia. So in school, I just really struggled, like super struggled, not that I wanted to learn. I used to sit in class and I really wanted to learn, but there was just, the teacher would say one thing and then you do a questionnaire of things and you get the answers and it's like, oh, they're all wrong. Anyway, moving on to the next lesson. So it's just always left behind. And I particularly remember when
you're disconnected from, it's all about the connections you have in society, and you're disconnected, whether it's at school or at home. You look around and you're just not part of that community. It's very hard way to grow up.
And particularly in school, because if you struggle, we had predicted GCSEs, so they predicted what you would basically leave school with, right? And I remember looking at my predicted grades and it was like D, E, F. And I remember going home to my mum and showing her, and she was really angry because she was like, what is the point of any of this if they are predicting you to fail? Like, it's just completely pointless. You've been in the school system for like close to a decade at that point, and you're predicted to fail.
Yeah.
Honestly, at that point, I did no revision, and I just thought, you know what? It's absolutely no reflection on me here, because if you still haven't taught me the basics by age 16, that's no reflection on me. Like, I had private tutoring every single Tuesday from the age of 5 to 16. And that was really what kind of kept me at a good sort of level. But I mean, going on to my mature life and work life, you just continue to struggle. You continue to take that sort of way of thinking that you're never quite good enough. I can't do anything right. You don't see wealth in your everyday life, like your family are not wealthy, so you just don't think there is an opportunity for you in
but
society.
This is a happy story, because we've talked about this. This is a happy story,
yeah,
because
sorry.
you are a smart
we'll come on to that, though. Alex, we'll come on to that, because yeah, you're quite right. And I want to come on to that point. It's really important, because I think that's that is the inspirational part of the story. But you're the eldest of four. And you got younger, all brothers or brothers and sisters?
Yeah, so I'm the oldest. I have a brother.
How did it affect those guys? Did they all?
So me and my brother, who's 2 years younger than me, we've been speaking about this a lot recently, and we've realised that it's really strange, because although we went through all of this as children, it actually has made us who we are today. And because we've got that grit and that determination to prove ourselves, that we don't want to end up like, you know, a failure, basically.
And just for the audience's benefit, your brother is part of the Storor team with 9 million followers on YouTube, right?
Yeah, so my brother is part of a huge YouTube group called Storor, who'd have just shy of 10 million subscribers on YouTube. My sister works for my dad, and then my youngest brother just got out of Cambridge University. Oh, so, wow. You know, we know our stuff.
So yeah, okay. So basically, you could say that experience has kind of fired you all up, right? But it didn't. I mean, to start with. So what happened in because right at the start of the pandemic, you were made redundant. What were you doing? What was your job then, and what happened?
Yeah, so I worked for a technology company doing networking provisions, like software, things like that, everyday stuff. I just absolutely hated it. It was so boring. And the crazy thing is, again, I really wanted to learn, but people there were just not willing to even give the opportunity to teach.
Network infrastructure is really not something that is exciting.
I tried. I honestly tried, but I just couldn't. It was terribly boring. So I remember I just used to look out the window in the office, and I was like, how can I get myself out of this situation? How can I make money? And basically they made me redundant completely on the spot, like a week before furlough and a week before lockdown. And even when lockdown came about and the furlough scheme, they could have actually retrospectively filed for furlough for me and for a few others, but they literally said,
they didn't.
Nah, we can't be asked with the paperwork.
Like Gordon Ramsay with his entire restaurant team that had won him 3 Michelin stars, he sacked them all before furlough
straight
came
away
and did not even bother to reinstate them.
No.
A little harsh.
They didn't care about us once in a 200-year pandemic. So really, for me, it honestly was do or die, because I just bought my first house on my own, which was a shared ownership house, which I'd saved up having lived with my mum for a couple of years. And,
well, back then in 2020, you just bought it.
In December 2019, I'd literally just moved into my new house, got made redundant in the March, and I had no savings. I had credit card debt, and I was like, oh my God, man, I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to lose my house, car, literally just got it. And I thought, it's really crazy because I didn't even have time to panic. I had like one afternoon to panic, and people were going white and anxious for me. They're like, oh God, I don't know what you're going to do. And I was like, oh my God, this isn't helping. And basically sorry. So without going into too much detail, because I don't want to promote it too much, but I found myself in a situation where I had to make do with kind of what I had in front of me. I was advertised to join this particular website to work on, and I basically gave it a go. And I realized that I could log on to this website for, say, 3 hours, and I would make close to my entire weekly salary in my old job.
Yeah.
So I then worked for this TV channel, which is no longer, but that's another story. And basically in my first month of working for this TV channel, I literally said to myself every day, I will not log off until I earn £500. I don't know why I had that figure in my head. I just thought, wow, what a lot of money in a day. And literally my first month, I became one of the top earners on the channel. I literally made like revenue. I think I did. So yeah.
Wow. So no, okay. So the important thing here is that both Alex and I have been worrying for some time about the number of people who have, so far, life's been okay. They've come out of uni, they've got a good job, they've maybe now bought their house, they're maybe starting a family, and the prospect of even the small chance of long-term unemployment is terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And I love your story because you found it actually what happened to you turned into something which has now put you in a position where you've made enough money where you now bought your own house, haven't you?
Yeah, so I sold that house in August 2023. I sold it for £80,000 more than I had bought it for. And I've moved into my 5-bed new build house down the road. And I honestly couldn't have dreamt. I've literally done it. Do you know what? Even a year and a bit ago, I actually didn't have the money for this. I just put pen to paper and I just grafted and just made sure that I could get it. I just always had my heart set on this particular house. I looked at varying other properties. I was looking at budgets of 1.3 million to like the lower end. Yeah, so I killed it. I did it, and I showed myself that with a little bit of determination and grit, you know, it doesn't matter what it is. You can make money online, pretty much doing anything. Even if I sold a toothbrush for £1, you know, if you sell 1 million, that's £1 million. So it requires people to just be creative, be a bit of a character, and be outlandish. Like, go and get what you want. It's really difficult, especially if you come from nothing. It's like near on impossible, but it's not impossible. People can do it, and every penny I have today is literally off my own sweat, tears. So.
And so, do you mind if I ask you? So, did you have to get a mortgage for the new house? You didn't buy it cash?
Yeah. So, got the mortgage for the new house. It was actually, they were being quite funny with like the limitations on what they were willing to offer me. They said, we'll give you more if you put more cash in. And I just thought, I don't want to put any more cash in right now into a property. So I was comfortable with what I was doing. But my mortgage is big. Yeah, but it's fine because it's all right. But yeah, I mean, if the interest rates go up anymore, jeez.
But you've got a decent amount of equity in the home, right?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
All right, because we don't want to see you doing the same as your mum and dad did.
No, it's not like that. Trust me, no.
No, and I'm looking at the messages at the moment, and there are some very supportive messages talking about grit and hard work, etc. For the couple of people who've posted silly things, I'd like to point out that I was in a very similar position to you, Maddison, back in about 1997, I think. Relationship breakdown and first flat. And suddenly we came off the fixed rate, literally the month the relationship ended. So not only did the mortgage double, but I was suddenly responsible for all of it. So my payments were 4 times what I've been paying previously. And I made the choice to go contracting rather than remaining as I went to my management team and I said, look, guys, I've earned this much for you. What can you do? And they went, well, not a lot, bugger off. So I became a contractor, and I honestly see what you've done as no different to an IT person going from being a permanent employee to becoming a contractor. I mean, we go out and we do what the client wants, and you have a premium on that, or you used to, and that allowed me to keep my flat for the next 15 years. And you do what you have to do in this life.
Absolutely.
And anyone who wants to be stupid about it and talk about is wrong. You've worked hard, you've done well, you've now got yourselves in a secure position at a young age. Congratulations. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. I think, look, lots of people can sit here and obviously criticize or, sort of talk down to what it is that I do. I don't want to glamorize it. It's difficult, and
it's a job.
It's a job, and I think, again, don't criticize people as to how they get their money, and literally just keep a roof over my head. I'm doing really well. I'm doing better than anybody that I know, and show me anyone that has done it in 2 years. That takes real intelligence. It takes graft. It takes it takes a lot to do that and to put yourself out there. And people who look at me and, will disregard me purely on the outside, more for you, because it's no reflection on me. I've got my shit down. I can back my shit up, really. Yeah. And I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of what I do. I do everything that I want, and I don't do stuff that I don't. And how many people can say that they have that element of freedom in their life and autonomy?
It's the ultimate. It's the ultimate. You should be. You are in charge of your destiny completely. You're answerable to nobody but yourself. That is the ultimate success, right? It doesn't matter how much money you're paid. if I may use such a vernacular, it doesn't matter how much money you're paid if you're still someone's bitch.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Thank you.
If you get up in the morning,
in which case, Charlie, I hate you because as a contractor, you're still someone's bitch.
So my point is, this is the best definition of success I've ever heard. If you wake up in the morning and go to bed at night, and in between you do what you want to do, you've succeeded. That's it. You've succeeded. Because there are plenty of people who are paid staggering sums of money to do something they hate, and that's just not a life, you know. So, and for me, I really want to talk to anyone watching this who is worried about. I mean, I did a post on X today about a woman who was on Mumsnet who said our mortgage payment is basically about to go up by about 50%. We are terrified, really scared, don't know what to do. We've got kids, we've got nurseries, both parents work, don't know how we're going to do it. And, you know, a lot of people, when you're busy, especially with children and work and stuff, life is very busy and there's not a lot of time to stop and think about stuff. And she said, it's crept up on me and suddenly, you know, it's going to go up and I don't know how we're going to afford it. And I think there are more and more people coming to the situation every single day who are really, really worried.
I was in that, can I just say, I was in that situation with my shared ownership house. So I had a 1-bedroom house on shared ownership, which I was so thankful for. It was such a lovely house. My mortgage was originally 436, and then it doubled to over £1,000 during the last year. That's why I decided to move here, because it's what I've got more for not that much more, actually, if you look at it in terms of monthly expenditure. But someone just asked in the comments,
five beds is quite a bit bigger.
Yeah, I didn't go for a mansion because I don't want that. It feels homely to me. It's exactly what I need and it's completely manageable. And I had this conversation with my dad about it. He said, do you really want to stretch yourself that much more for that, I don't know, 1.3 million and then have to be worrying? And I said, no, I don't want to worry. I want to pay off the mortgage. But to be honest, the shared ownership house was the best thing that I ever did. It was going, a lot of people talk badly about shared ownership, but honestly, it is fantastic because at least you have something that is yours, and they're way more reluctant to chuck people out, you know, if you don't pay. So
absolutely. But just for people who are asking, you're living with your mum at the moment.
Am I?
Yeah.
No. So my mum lives down the road.
She's right.
So my mum lives just down the road from me, in the house that she still rents to this day. But no, we just have watched the channel for a long time because I was just curious about the market pre me looking to buy.
What do you make of shared ownership? Was shared ownership something you would recommend to people or not?
Absolutely, highly recommend. It was the best thing I ever did.
Wow. I hear mostly
you were lucky. Yeah.
How come it worked out for you?
I think it was because the place that I bought, I knew they had undervalued it. They'd like messed it up a little bit. So I'd made like 80 grand equity in this house in like 2 years.
Always on the hustle, huh?
Yeah, got a hustle.
Look at the comment on the screen now. So someone called Uni on YouTube says, I want to try shared ownership. I grew up in council housing with very few prospects of ever owning a home.
Yeah.
Might be the only way for me to get on the ladder as a single buyer.
It's the best thing to do. I highly recommend. And look, at the end of the day, as long as you have just a proportion of something that is yours, it is yours. Like the HA or the council will just leave you to it.
But Maddison, just you got into shared ownership in what year?
2019.
Right. Would you really want to get into shared ownership now, given the?
No. But again,
so when we say just to big caveat it, we can highly recommend it if somebody is smart enough to find a property that they have massively undervalued and therefore can build it up. But that's going to be hard to do at the moment. It
depends on your prospects, though, doesn't it? Because
of course it does.
Because again, for me, I had my older job, and I could just about reach the threshold for that house. And I didn't know that my life was going to dramatically change so much, and then I would move out. Otherwise, that would have been my forever home that I would have cherished forever. And I only owned like 60% of it, but that was more than enough. But obviously today, the market is difficult. But like Charlie says, if you need a home and you can sort of keep it sustainable and you don't think your job is that much at threat. I mean, everything is, nothing in life is certain, right?
No.
Not even what I do is certain.
No.
So it just depends what level of risk you want to take, really.
But just like you, as we discussed earlier, my salary tripled, quadrupled in the space of 9 months. And that made a massive difference, from going from permanent employment to contracting. And that changes all of the outlook. But for people who are not willing or able to make that leap, shared ownership now in properties that in many ways are overvalued rather than undervalued could be a hiding to nothing. I mean, it could be a big loss for you.
Yeah. But every even if you're buying a house without shared ownership, it would be the same level of risk. Unless your parents are giving you hundreds of thousands of pounds, which seemingly a lot of people are given.
That would be nice.
Yeah, Ricky, he says it's a more secure option than renting. I think that's the big point. I had a one-to-one video call with some viewers of the channel a while ago who were in shared ownership because they were so fed up of landlords bouncing them around and never being able to settle in one place. So that's one major advantage of shared ownership, is once you've bought shared ownership, you're not going to be moved on by a landlord. That I think in itself is a salvation for some people who can't seem to find a decent landlord.
Yeah, definitely.
But I love the concept of the hustle and as in, if you can look far down the road and see that there may be trouble ahead, and if you're someone who's worried about losing your home for whatever reason, don't be the rabbit in the headlights and wait until it's too late. Start making provisions as early as you can, because you'll be amazed how you can actually make changes in your life that mean that you will get by. So for example, giving up on luxuries, obviously, things you're used to spending money, you're just going to have to get used to the fact that, what would you rather do? Keep smoking, which is horribly expensive, or keep your home? If it gets down to that level of hardship, people are going to have to give up on expensive stuff. And the other thing is, that there are options of, if you've got a spare bedroom, you can get a lodger in to help. There are all kinds of things that people can do. And if you do lose your job and you can't find another job, I remember I got fired from my job in the city, and I was only at the time 21, because I went to the city instead of going to university. So I was in the city when I was 19, 20, 21 years old. And when I got fired, it was the beginning of the summer. All of my friends were just leaving university, and I didn't want to go back into an office job while all of my mates were partying all summer long. I wanted to be free to go and join them and have a fantastic summer. And so I just started knocking on people's doors and offering to clean their cars for them. I've loved cars. I've always loved cars. And it was only intended to be just a summer job, just go and earn a bit of money for the summer, stay at home with my parents, and then go back into an office job. So I thought later that year, at the end of the summer. By the end of the summer, two things had happened that I hadn't expected. The customers that I found, it took a while to build up my round, but all the customers I built up said, "Can you come back in 2 weeks' time?" So suddenly I had this repeat business, and I was being recommended, and then I had more customers than I could handle, and suddenly I had a business, and then suddenly came along and offered to buy my business off me. and even though I was, washing cars myself alone most days of the week, I was earning better money than I was in the city, because I was a junior dickhead and just wasn't earning much money. But I had freedom, and I could come and go as I pleased, and I could go and see friends and whatever I wanted. And that freedom to me was addictive. And I basically never worked for anyone else since. I just, after I got fired from my job in the city, I was like, when you work, you create value. If you work for someone else, the majority of that value goes to your employer. If you work for yourself, you get to keep 100% of the value.
Yeah, exactly.
It's as simple as that. And although people assume that there is less certainty in working for yourself, I would argue that in the environment we're coming into now, that's not true. And actually, if you work for yourself, you have a little element more control rather than just being summarily, sorry, your department is being cut.
I would say, Charlie, you have more experience. I think there are going to be a lot of permanent, in the same way, thing that happened in 2008. I saw the IT market flooded with contractors. Now, these were not natural contractors. These were not people who were willing to hustle. These were permanent employees who had just been sacked. And they saw no other way to go other than set up a limited company and become a contractor. And I think the same thing is about to happen now. But the mentality is not that of somebody who wants to be free. They are actually somebody who would like to be in a framework of discipline and regular pay and all the rest of those good things. It's going to be horrible.
And that is, can I just say, it's also absolutely fine to work for somebody. There's no problem with that.
Yeah, of course.
Working for yourself is like, it's a 24/7 thing. It's not like I can just switch off at 7.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said actually for that, for a solid every month the same.
If you are successful and you work hard in the
and you enjoy the job.
Well, but even if you don't enjoy the job, but you have a family to provide for, and so I'm going back now to my parents. I'm going back to a man who is now 81 years old, and he worked very, very hard, and he was lucky enough to be quite successful, and so there was progression through a single company for 40 odd years. And they would promote you, and they would, the pay rises came and life got better, and that was great. But that's not the way companies work now. Even for permanent employees to do better, they have to move company. They have to keep shifting place to place. They have to learn a new culture, learn a new system, learn a new way of working. And so actually our efficiency goes down. And it's no different in some respects to being a contractor. My sister and her husband, I look at them and they have changed jobs every 4 or 5 years. My father changed jobs twice in a 35-year career. Once in a 35-year career. The way the world works is different. And we're going to have lots of people who are not entrepreneurs, who are not ready to hustle, who are not happy to have their phone on at 11 o'clock.
No, hang on. Sorry. Okay, Alex, may I interrupt you? Because you don't need to be an entrepreneur to go and wash people's cars for a living. You don't need to be an entrepreneur to go and do basic like gardening jobs. You don't need to. You just need to be someone who's willing to work hard.
Define entrepreneur.
An entrepreneur is a between taker, literally translated into French. It's an opportunity seizer. Okay?
Yes,
but
employees are not between takers. Anyone who is willing to go contracting, to do what Maddison has done, is an entrepreneur. Yeah, by definition.
But well, I mean, to me, I think entrepreneur is overused. If you're doing something that lots and lots of people do, you're just choosing to work for yourself rather than being. If you're trying to create change, that's what real entrepreneurs do, in my mind, is actually creating change. But I don't object to people calling themselves entrepreneurs. If that's, it doesn't matter. These are just labels. They don't really matter. But what I mean is that I think there is this stigma amongst people who've only ever been employed, that being self-employed is scary and difficult. And
I had that. And actually, that is what happened to me. I tried to work very ad hoc whilst having my normal job. And sadly for me, I was a bit loose-lipped to my friend at work, who then told the bosses at work. And they actually pulled me in a week before they fired me. And they said, look, we know that you're working elsewhere. And I said, well, don't know what you're talking about. And they said, well, either you can hand in your notice today or we'll take you to a disciplinary. And I was so frightened because I really didn't know if I could do it on my own, because you have to create your own demand, your own work, your own money.
Yeah. The point I want to make, and I really want to get this message out to anyone who's willing to get up in the morning and actually do a day's work, that is all you need. If you've got enough, if you're someone who's willing to turn up and work for someone else, that is all you need. You just got to pick. There are requirements for services, for basic stuff that you can do without training. There are things you can teach yourself how to do. There is a massive plethora of different services that people need done. And when in 2008. When that hit, I was running a photography and floor plan company, and I'd fully employed payroll employees, full-time photographers in London. And 2008 came along and it just smashed the property market for six. And I had to basically, that business failed. And when I restarted up, I restarted it where they were self-employed contractors, but a whole bunch of those guys went off and set up on their own. They'd learned a skill, and some of them did very, very well for themselves. And I was so happy to see that happen. So it can be, people think, but limited company, tax, what do I do? It's I promise you, if you can be bothered to get up and do a day's work, you can be bothered to figure that stuff out. And it is not rocket science. And so I don't want people to give up hope and think, if I lose my job, I've lost everything. You genuinely can. You don't even need.
Sorry, Charlie. I apologies. I get where you're coming from now. Running a limited company is not difficult. Everyone makes it sound like it's rocket science. You can set up as a limited company in a single day. You can get VAT registered within a week. You can actually start charging and invoicing clients. No problem. You can pay a basic accountant, depending on how difficult your business is, less than £1,500 a year. And your personal indemnity and liability insurance will probably come to about £350 a year, depending on how many millions you have to have around the world. Once you've done that, you still have to get off your arse every day and find your own work. That is the only difficult bit.
But hang on a second. So there are a lot of people who are coming out of companies. So if you've worked in any kind of professional service and you get let go, roughly speaking, you'll be able to charge double what you were earning and still be charging a lot less than the company who is
again. Well, okay. So I've been doing this since 1998, and this is why why I've moved into building rather than IT.
Yeah, but that you come from a very specific, highly skilled set, right? And you also at the top of your game as well. I want to get the message across to people that you may have a very ordinary run-of-the-mill job, and it is easier to make a living being self-employed than you think. Now, what's harder is to make a living setting up a new idea that you've got to persuade everyone is a good idea. That's fucking impossible. Right? Even when it's a great idea. I've done this the hard way. You can have a great idea, but no one actually needs your great idea. And they go, yeah, that's a great idea, but no thanks, I don't need it. That's
I don't want to pay for it.
If you live somewhere where there are lots of coffee shops, and they're all terrible, and you set up a better coffee shop, you're not going to persuade anyone of anything.
It's just about having an idea that you execute well, and you market well, you have good communication, and you plug a gap in the market. And actually, just through doing what I do today, I've realized I can do sales. And I never used to think that back in the day. I was like, oh God, I could never do sales, never be a salesperson. And now I'm like, Jesus, I could do it with my eyes closed. And it's just about...
There's someone I've known my whole life, and I've known him since he was a very small boy. He's now sort of 40 or so, and he had severe learning difficulties at school, really struggled at school. He is as reliable and honest as the day is long. He will work as hard as you want to work. And when he lost a job a few years ago, he decided that he was fed up with relying on employers who kept on letting him go. And so he started going around to people's houses and offering to cut their lawn for them. I'll come and cut your grass. I've got my mower, I'll cut your grass. And because he was such a delightful guy and so reliable, he was so reliable, he very, very quickly became very, very popular and was doing quite well. And he built up, and this is because I think reliability is the single most valuable asset that anyone can have as an employee or as a provider of services. If you are reliable, people will choose you over other people. And the lovely end of the story is that he was doing such a good job looking after these people's gardens that one of his customers, he had no idea, had connections. And the long story short is he's now ended up as a full-time gardener at Windsor Castle.
Nice.
Employed by the royal
crazy.
household on great money, and he's just like, and he's got a job for life there now. Absolute job for life.
Can I just say that from being a viewer of the channel as well, and the title of the show is Moving Home with Charlie. I think people forget that people's homes are so much more than just a home. You're talking about people's lives, people's opportunity to create business, make money, start a family, and many other things. Memories and do you know what? Just from this channel, it's just given me an eye into so many different aspects of things that I hadn't thought about before, and especially with Gary Stevenson as well, obviously the trader, the ex-Citibank trader, and his story, and just realizing that even if you don't have money today, there's a lot of reasons why that may be, but you can use that to your advantage. And I don't know if anyone here has ever read the book Outliers, which talks about why people are successful, or various people are successful today. And a lot of people mostly contribute it to, oh, I've just got this amazing talent. And most of the time it takes talent and skill, but also there's a lot of other factors that go into it, such as where someone was born, how old they are, what sex they are, etc., etc. And that was a really eye-opening book to me, because especially as a woman, you sort of go through life and you just don't really see opportunities open to you. I know it's got a lot better in the recent years, and especially for younger people today, but there's still a long way to go. And obviously I'm a product of my environment as much as anybody else, and I wish that what I knew today I could go back and be a computer scientist, or various other things that are really interesting. So it's just about seeing opportunity, seeing people who look like you doing things that could be on offer to you, and things like that. Really,
I as an employer, I have directly employed over the last 30 years over 500 people. I have probably interviewed 10 times that number. And the one thing that is the overriding impression I get from that experience of being an employer for that long is how much almost all, not all, but very nearly all employed people undervalue themselves and don't realize how valuable they are. And if you are reliable, if you can show up on time and follow the instructions that you're expected to do for your job, if you're good enough to do that, you're already better than most people. And that means that you will definitely, in a chosen pursuit of your own, to being self-employed, you're going to be good. And I hope that anyone who's afraid,
Charlie.
Yeah.
In my fascist conservative I said, I go, so I'm sorry, the yardstick is you can turn up on time and do a half decent job. Fuck that. That is what is wrong with this country at the moment.
No, sorry.
I used to do the bare minimum.
Alex, you have, from the moment you've
but that
started
was because
working,
you were working in an industry that didn't inspire you. You were doing
correct.
Stuff. No, I actually quite enjoyed. I used to work in IT. I enjoyed network stuff. But Charlie, you can't say that it's all fine with the world, and because people are doing this, and that is the bare minimum. The issue is that people these days don't work as hard as they need to.
Alex, they're uninspired. They're uninspired.
Yeah,
they're highly
I agree.
leveraged with debt,
I agree.
and they're poor. Your death in
But
poverty.
are they poor because they're uninspired, or are they uninspired because they're poor?
No, Alex, sorry, it's a whole generation. It's a generation who's been raised with far less to be inspired by, and when you try and pitch younger generations, well, when we were young, it's like everything was different then, right? It was like the way we were raised was different, the ethics were different, everything about it was different. And also back then, people were happy being subservient. Nowadays, people are going, fuck that for a game of soldiers. I don't want to go and do that job for how much money? Go on your bike. I mean, I've got friends who are directors at very large, big name banks who are in their 40s hiring Gen Zers going, where the fuck do these guys get off? What are they expecting? They come in. It feels like they're interviewing me about whether my company's good enough for them to come and work out. Don't they know how hard I've worked to get this position? And we have, I can see both sides of it. I can see this amazing mismatch in working culture where younger people look at older people and going, did you work that hard for what? You're a mug. That's what people have, I can see some people thinking.
Well, people used to be a postman and they'd be able to afford a house. So
exactly. And Alex, you've done a job. You've pursued a career which is a very highly technical skilled career and a very highly paid career by most people's standards. I am talking about ordinary people who don't have exceptional skills or qualifications, but are willing, they are literate and they're numerate and they can turn up and do a day's work. And for those people who maybe have worked very hard 15 years to get a house and are now facing the potential loss of that house because either their mortgage is going to become unaffordable or they're going to lose their job, the important thing is that you don't give up and go,
Charlie,
what do I do?
As you know
That's
well,
what I'm trying to say.
As you know well, I am terribly worried about people under the age of about 55 for the future.
Yeah.
And the people under the age of 30, fucked, basically. And it's part of it is disinterest, but I totally understand this disinterest because there really isn't any value that's coming into the country. There's no ambition that they can follow that is going to actually make them as wealthy as their grandparents when they look, not their parents, but their grandparents, because their parents are struggling. And I get it. I feel very sad for it. But at the same time, regardless of how little the benefit, you should still turn up on time, do the job, put everything you can into it, and maybe, like Maddison, and as I did when I became a contractor in 97, things will go well for you.
I again, as an employer, right, direct employer, where the businesses that I've owned have succeeded or failed based on the quality of the output of the team, I can tell you that two things, if you can bring these two things to a job, you will outperform anyone else in your company and you'll be more valuable, you'll get more promoted, you'll be offered other jobs. And it is number one, be reliable. And number two, be enthusiastic. I promise you, as an employer, reliable, enthusiastic people are very, very hard to find. And when you find them, and it's not difficult to be reliable, just being reliable is not hard, it's a choice.
What is the point of turning up to the job if you can't buy anything? Inflation is running at like 4 or 5%, and you can barely go out at the weekend.
But if a job is worth doing, like if you are choosing to invest your day by giving it to someone else in return for money, even if it's a shit job and it's underpaid, if you do it reliably and with enthusiasm, if an opportunity opens up in that company, you're going to get it. And if it doesn't, you will be spotted by the people, and people who know you will recommend you. It is the. Do you know where I first learned this? I have a lot of friends in the film business, and by complete coincidence, I spent a lot of time on film sets of both studio film sets and independent productions, and I've got to know the cast and the crew and the whole thing. And the people, all the crew on a film set, the people you never ever see, the creatives, the set designers, the constructors, the costumes, all these kind of guys. These are all freelance, independent, self-employed people, okay? And they're all just completely ordinary people, just completely ordinary. You know, I always imagine that people working on films are some kind of magical fairies that came out of some kind of place. But no, they're just, and do you know what they all were? Because in that industry, if you are not reliable, just forget it. You won't ever get work. You just turn up. And I remember talking to people when they were electricians and makeup artists just going, yeah, well, I said, how did you end up in the film industry? And they were like, I was just an electrician, but I was just really reliable, and so I got offered this work. It's much better money. Yeah, just be reliable. If you're flaky and you're always a bit late and you've always got an excuse and you think you're being clever, you might get away with it and you might blag it and you might still get paid. You might not lose your job. You're doing the minimum required to get by. But the person you're actually letting down the most is yourself, because you won't get the opportunities, and other people will pass you by if you take that. And if you're in a job where you cannot be fucked, try and get another job. Try and get another job. Who's having to say go? Is someone saying goodbye? Oh no, okay. Sorry, I was just checking that private chat.
Sorry, Charlie. I just thought we'd hit 10 o'clock.
Oh, is that Stiggy out?
You know when Bruce Lee jumps on the guy's neck and you get that crunching when he turns his foot? It's that noise. That is the noise you should be focusing on.
I'm gonna finish this comment here.
I
right?
wish my stomach looked like his when I was doing that, but
So Steve Fairbanks says, Charlie, I was enthusiastic, reliable, and was very good at my job, and I did 60 hours a week, unpaid overtime. I just got used and abused. Steve, you sound to me like the kind of person I was talking about, who is totally undervaluing themselves, because you know what you should have done if you were that person is not stayed where you were, or if you were that reliable and that much of an asset to your employer. And this is what some people go wrong, is you should have gone to your employer and said, is there any reason that I'm not now worth more? Is there any reason I'm not worth the overtime? If you simply ask for something reasonable, you'll be amazed how often the answer is yes.
No.
Yes.
I mean, Charlie, don't get me wrong.
Not in large corporations. Not in large corporations.
Do exactly
in
what
smaller
you said.
companies. In smaller companies.
Yes. Do exactly what you said. I agree. But I did exactly that at the age of 27. I had earned the company £245,000. They were paying me £27,000. Bear in mind, this was 1997.
Yeah.
And I said, come on, guys, I've worked at PA Consulting for you. Their consultants get 30% of what they earn. I'm not asking for 30%. What I need is 45 grand a year. That's what I need. And you can give it to me as profit-related pay. It doesn't need to be a salary increase, because I know that next year I can earn you the same amount. And they turned around. This is SCC, big company. They turned around and went, nah, fuck you. And I went contracting.
Why did they say no, fuck you? This is the next thing I want to understand from a company's perspective.
Because if they had handed me that profit-related pay, then they would have to have dealt with the other 47 project managers on the book in their role. And therefore, they're like, no. Oh, God, no. We would rather lose this guy who's just made us an absolute fortune than...
Yeah.
And that's the way it goes.
Steve, I'm just acknowledging Steve's reply to what I said. He loved his job. That's something, Steve. If you loved it, that's cool. You asked for pay rise and got told you'd have to leave. Oh, that's horrible. That's horrible. I'm sorry to hear that. Right, guys. Okay. Well, listen, Maddie, is there anything else you would like to add to wrap up? Anything you want to say to the audience, or anyone got any last minute questions for Maddie?
Just that really, this has been completely eye-opening for me. I know a lot of people will think, by the way, I'm not here to advertise myself. I'm just literally here to add to the cause. I really believe in what this channel is trying to do. And I really believe in a house for everyone. I think it's a God-given right that people have a home, and a decent quality home that won't just be ripped from them at any second. And it's been really, really difficult, 31 years to get to this point in my life. And it's frightening. And even still to this day, like I have this chip on my shoulders where I'm like, I have to hoard money because otherwise I'm terribly frightened that at any second, something's going to happen and I'm going to have to duck it or some big crisis. So I really believe in what this channel is doing. I believe we just need to acknowledge the fact that continually having increasing house prices is not actually good for any of us.
Yeah.
It's not good, because it's all relative. Just because your house has gone up, so is the next one you want to go to. And the whole system is jammed right now of people that are unhappy, people who can't afford, people who are in negative equity, people who are trying to downsize but don't want to downsize because they don't want to pay for the stamp duty. Honestly, if most of all of our income that we spend goes on paying towards our housing, if we just got that one factor right, we could perhaps have a ricochet effect on people's lives and improve people in being happier, in wanting to work harder at work, and being enthused with life, just period. And unfortunately now we have generations of young people who are just completely and utterly distraught. People don't know what to do. And this is one thing that this channel does do. It contributes and it gives people a different perspective than what is in the mainstream media, because the mainstream media do not want you to know what is going on, what they are doing to you, which is making you poorer every single day. And it's really difficult out there. It's difficult to earn any type of money to live, and even if you earn hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, 62% of it gets taxed plus VAT. Like, it's absolutely crazy that even if you take yourself out of poverty, you then get laid with a huge tax bill to then indebt yourself by hundreds of thousands of pounds in a mortgage. None of it makes any sense. And I'm one of those people that used to turn up late, 9:10 every day. I used to get a slap on the wrist. I was completely just at my wit's end, thinking, bloody hell, I'm like 28. How am I going to do this for another 30 years at least? And I had to do something. And weirdly for me, the COVID pandemic kicked me into action where I wasn't given any choice, and it was do or die, and I just had to make it happen. And I did make it happen. And I'm not any genius. I don't have any secret formula. So if I can do it, trust me, people out there, you can do it too. And also, not everything in life is about money. Time is something that is highly valuable that you cannot get back and you cannot get any more
Absolutely.
of.
Amen. People say time is money. No, time is infinitely more valuable than money, because you can always get more money. You can beg, borrow, steal, print, make. Nobody can do that with time. You're the richest person in the world. You cannot borrow any more time.
Yeah.
Time is the great equalizer and a great leveler. And to me, time is life. Like, you're giving someone your time, you're giving them your life. Your life is made up of years, months, weeks, days, hours, and minutes and seconds. So it's absolutely right about that. Absolutely right. Right. Well, I would like to thank you very much, Maddison. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your story, your parents' story, and helping me get the message across about the threat of negative equity and how people should take it seriously, because it really does affect people. And also the inspirational story of actually, finding yourself out of a job, but turning it around and finding a way to make money and get yourself your own home. So congratulations on getting your own home.
Yeah, thank you so much.
May you live there long and happy. Alex, thank you very much too. There are lots more questions. I'm sorry, guys. There's so many more questions. And we always run out of time. There's never enough time to take all the questions. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for your questions. And we will see you on the next one. Have a great night. Love and luck to everybody. And good night. Bye-bye, everyone.
Buonanotte. Dobranotte.